I'm Chris Coleman, and I directed The Beard of Avon. And Beard is a play about who actually wrote Shakespeare's plays.
There are several theories behind who wrote these plays. The current most popular theory is that Edward de Vere, the 17th or 16th Lord of Oxford, was actually responsible for writing Shakespeare's plays.
Many things that actually happened in his life show up in the plays and poems of Shakespeare in a way that never happened with William Shakespeare, the guy from Stratford-on-Avon's life, his biography. We have no information that he ever traveled outside the country or that he ever did, half the things he did. But many situations, locations, people from de Vere's life actually end up in Shakespeare's plays.
Twelfth Night is one of Shakespeare's romantic comedies. It was first produced in 1602, so we do believe. And one of the things I'm the most excited about with the pairing of The Beard of Avon and Twelfth Night is that we will be doing and performing this production in Elizabethan England.
Researching this show was actually, it's in a way both complicated and very easy. It is a well-documented era for costumes, but it tends to be the upper classes. And we have our world of the players very much, down in the mud and muck kind of classes. And it's a little harder in our time period, which I kept to from 1585 to about 1605.
These are renderings of the set that has been designed by Bill Bloodgood. One of the great things and challenges that we had in front of us were how do two productions simultaneously live in the same world, and then what will be that landscape of the world?
We had to find a way that we could make a setting that could serve for all the necessary entrances and exits and other staging requirements of each play, and yet have a kind of simplicity about it that wouldn't require us to change it over between different performances.
With Bill, we went into design meetings, and we decided that we would present the piece in what is basically the backstage of an old Elizabethan theater.
I was certainly inspired by some illustrations done by a man named Walter Hodges, who was an expert in Elizabethan theaters, and always intrigued by one sketch he did, a conjectural sketch of Shakespeare's Globe Theater.
Here you can see are the actual renderings of the old Globe Theater that Bill did research and found. And of course up here he found that this is where they did store props and things.
I tried to think of all the odds and ends that you'd need for a Shakespeare play, especially the furniture, the shields, the flags, the severed heads, the chairs, stools, baskets, hampers, swords, musical instruments, arrows and quivers. I have Puck's broom up here.
So one of the things that we were really interested in terms of it being a presentational style, because in Elizabethan theater was very presentational. We decided that with the ground plan that Bill had an idea of taking it and really thrusting it out into the audience. And so that's what we've done here. And he's actually removed some seats from the first row, and therefore really pushing the action of the play in this forced perspective way downstage. And then it will give the audience an opportunity to be very intimate with the actors. We have all these marvelous entrances. He is, there's something like, I think there's something like 16 or 17 different places an actor could come from in the theater for this play. And that's a lot of fun. You have the opportunity for it to become very choreographic.
The clothing itself is really detailed, very complicated, very foreign to our eye today. But as we've been saying in the costume shop, hot, hot, hot. It looks great on everybody, believe it or not. And it's been fun trying to reconstruct this period. It's
a pretty sexy play, actually, and You know, there's a great moment at the end of the first scene where Will Shakespeare is really depressed because he's sitting out on this farm and he has no kind of creative outlet, and his wife is pissed off because the roof is falling in. And finally, she cheers him up by saying, the players are here in town, and they're doing a low comedy. And I think that you know, fart jokes and sex jokes and sleeping with the wrong person and thinking you're sleeping with one person who's in disguise, who's actually another person, happens throughout the play and is pretty hilarious. And you know, and then I think what's wonderful is then you get to go see Twelfth Night, where William Shakespeare is taking those ideas that he was clearly in love with in his own life and then putting them into a really crafted, structured form.
It's always a great pleasure, honor, and joy when an actor comes in and has great ideas that they can bring into the room, and then the process of a very deep and trusting collaboration can begin.
This is an extraordinary company of actors, and so they bring incredible ideas to the table, and you, if you're a smart director, then you take advantage of that and you encourage it as much as possible.
No matter what we say, essentially, a character is in great part what we are. We cannot avoid that. But we find one of the great joys of acting is that you get to discover all the parts of yourself, all the aspects of yourself, and you use those parts then that serve this particular character. You certainly learn different kinds of ways to move. The emotional part of it has to come from, you know, inside you.
I just sort of throw myself into the character and don't worry that it's not myself, or maybe that I'm going to look bad or look ridiculous or look unpleasant to the audience. My job is not to make myself likable, it's to make my character full and interesting and alive and present on stage.
You find their physicality, their emotional journey. You find the way they move, the way they talk. Do they speak in a high pitch? Do they speak in a low pitch? Where does that voice live? Where does their walk, how does their walk work? How do their gestures come about? And it's particularly fun when you're doing two completely different characters like we are in this rep, and we're rehearsing them at the same time. So you have to make sure that you don't let Mariah's qualities bleed over into Anne Hathaway's qualities. So you really have to make them very distinct and very completely full.
Not only do they need to be different, but they inform each other, all of the characters. In both shows, they inform each other because they have to be different, and yet some of them are very similar in their behaviors, you know, the people are playing.
Here is Sir Toby Belch, and you can see he's in a bright red outfit. I had in mind when I drew him the character Sir Toby Belch, but I also knew that this actor plays Lord Burleigh. And Lord Burleigh is one of the people in our color palette who goes into the red and black world of the court. We have laid out here an example of the two color palettes. There's more than two color palettes in the Beard of Avon, but there's two really huge general color palettes that I think of as groups as opposed to the independent individual characters. So we have over here the player world, and Shakespeare fits into this world, of course, so he's in our brown tones, but this sort of green, brown, maybe a hint of purple, a hint of non-metallic golds is something that we really strove to really keep tight. Over here, we have a bunch of the red, this is the court world, and you can see from these sketches there's a lot of red, but there are actually 2 or 3 more black costumes that fit into this. So the court is black, red, and their golds are real metal, whereas in the player world I've tried to keep it as a sort of, you know, a mustard fabric golds.
We are firmly attached to who will be telling the story through the course of the evening, and we get pretty deep into their circumstances right away. I love the fact that it's an ensemble piece. Every single actor in this show really has to carry their weight and then help support the other actors. There's so much coming and going, and it takes place in these two households where loss and tragedy are the main events of the day, and then of course this fantastic hijinks of comedy comes out of all that loss, which is of course what makes us laugh.